And even this is often insufficient, and he carries a bag of vegan groceries heavy enough to sink his right arm like a weight-bearing scale of justice that Dennis Kucinich is. A former congressman and presidential candidate also running for governor, he has been endorsed in the May 8th Democratic primary by allies of Senator Bernie Sanders. He's like, Bernie Sanders like, I'm saying, this is too much for me. Too much for me. Two great progressives. I can't make up my mind. I hope that was a good running impression. But pleased you guys. Anyways, yeah, so they remember Kucinich's lectern pounding opposition to the Iraq War and his long ago turn as the boy mayor of Cleveland. Dennis, Keith Thornhill shouted. 58, he was wearing a cape-wearing sidewalk busker who was a teenager when Kucinich now was 71. He first ran the city. Glad you're back in the game, man. Hey, Superman. Kucinich said he looks like a homeless guy playing on the street. Kucinich is pushing ideas like tuition-free college and single-payer healthcare long before they came in a fashion. There's a check mark for me there. I mean, we already know so much about Dennis Kucinich. He has such strong progressive credentials here. I mean, since the election of President Trump, certain conflicts have been really inevitable for a Democratic Party asking itself how to win, liberal or moderate candidates, populist or pragmatic. There's been really a war for this. The place to be is really kind of one-sided. It's kind of Americans. There are many polls out and many results and many case studies showing that the most progressive Americans do end up winning. But there is the situation where there is a more basic tension has consumed the collective left. Who is the truest claim to progressivism in 2018? But when both candidates credibly grabbed that label, is it better to be liberal on guns or Bane on the banks? To be a fire breather or a bit of a square? So who knows? I think they're both kind of liberal on guns, and they're not going to let the banks get away with anything. So that's kind of the same situation. So there's no stigma in being confident. Kevin Davis, 63, of Akron, a Cordray supporter and a fundraiser who has gravitated towards the candidates' work within system of defense of responsive government. Dennis just promises everything, and he has a pretty good record of being like he's able to stick through on those promises. It's not hard to be pulled in the vortex of Dennis Kucinich. Nina Turner, former state senator and president of Our Revolution, one of my personal favorites, a group that has formed out of Sanders' presidential campaign and that has endorsed Kucinich. She says he is infectious. I'm going to agree with that. It looks pretty exciting, like he has a great campaign going on. As the Democrats look to reclaim a purple state shading red in recent history, it suggests a slog. Trump won Ohio by 8 points. He has a Republican-controlled legislature, and he has a Republican governor has had a Republican governor for all 4 years, but not he won. The prospect of a Democratic-friendly election year and the whiff of scandal in Columbus, where the House Speaker has resigned this month, as the federal investigators question his conduct, has convinced strategists that even a proudly liberal candidate could win in November if they have the right policy ideas. They're going to support the working man. I mean, yeah, I definitely say you got a shot and get enough name recognition exposure like Dennis Kucinich has, and that's a big check for him. So one of the big things we progressives have to deal with, because not a lot of us are like running it as a member of the people. Like, for example, the ridiculous, awful Joe Manchin is being primaried right now by Paula Jean Swearingen, who is a daughter, no real credentials, no experience in politics. We got Paula Jean Swearingen, who's primarying the coal miner's, who's a coal miner's daughter, and is primarying Joe Manchin. So, I mean, not a lot of people are just going to know, like, a random coal miner's daughter. She's also an environmental activist as well. But there is still quite a lot to love on this, and that's why. I mean, she's been working hard to build name recognition so she can get a really good policy platform out there. So that's pretty nice. So the Democratic primary doubles an early proxy test for the support of Warren and Sanders, the two possible presidential candidates in 2020, and a peek at precisely what kind of figure can speak to today's party base in a Midwestern bellwether. I mean, if Warren and Sanders win the primary, I just sat back and be like, okay, we're going to win. Either way, we're going to win the election, because that's what I love both of them, and I never want to see them pitted against each other. I mean, maybe Warren will stick out because of Bernie Sanders. I mean, maybe they'll have some sort of plan, and maybe they've talked about it. I do not know. Cordray is a former state attorney. I'm very sorry. I'm very tired today. What is wrong with me? He has campaigned with Warren, who has devised his bank regulating agency. He devised the bank regulating agency he oversaw under President Barack Obama. He's leading heavily on support from labor groups like the Ohio Federation of Teachers and the AFL-CIO, taking public appearances with protect the little guy anecdotes from his watchdog role and hope that voters will not mistake boring for moderate. He's real progressive. He is not going to mess around, and that's something that I do respect. There's talk of task forces and pension protections, government being a force for good again. He can appear on most animated on condemning the ongoing war on local communities, from budget slashing state officials, and like Kucinich said, he had proposed making community college free for all Ohioans. He's unassuming, Warren said in an interview, recalling Corder's habit of wandering into his office without shoes when pressed for a humanizing detail. It's a little strange. But he is a fighter. Once he gets an issue, once he gets it locked in, he will fight for it. This is according to Elizabeth Warren, so I trust what she says on this one, I guess. Kucinich is, as ever, is much more of a thrower of bombs, a shaker of hand, and an enemy of animal products, now entering his second half-century in politics. Wow, so he's been around a while. There's a strange political amalgam in an ambitious young man. Read a 1972 headline about him in the Akron Beacon Journal. So he's been around a while, and he's been throwing bombs. He's been making people get, whoa, who is that guy, for quite a long time. He defends Trump. He sees UFOs. Read another Cincinnati Enquirer in March alluding to Kucinich's recent career as a Fox News pundit, and claimed to have seen an unidentified flying object at the home of an actress of his friend, Shirley MacLaine. Can Kucinich win? Who knows? He can, however, improbably. Kucinich has emerged as a persistent threat to Cordray, the presumed favorite, spooking party officials who fear Kucinich would stand little chance in the fall. Primary polling has been inconsistent. One recent survey showed the race effectively tied, and another gave Cordray a double-digit edge, though more half the respondents were undecided. So, I mean, if you're a Democrat, it's really tough to choose between these two guys, but I don't know. In the end, I'm not ready to make my decision yet. Any more time. Anyway, so Kucinich is betting on a condition of still loyal former constituents. A brief stroll through Cleveland's West Side Market recently included interactions with a woman whose father Kucinich once caddied for, a producer vendor who attended the school with his sister, and a produce vendor that attended the school with his sister, and a police officer who worked security at his third wedding. He had also built a nascent following, awakened to Bernie Sanders' politics since his run. Sanders himself has endorsed Kucinich. Dennis says is his own man. Dennis is a very, unusual politician. So, I mean, he is not against unusual politicians, that's for sure. Sanders, but our revolution, the Sanders Line Group, has held up Kucinich as a progressive seer who pushed ideas like tuition-free college long before they came into wider fashion, rallying for behind-the-storm populism familiar to admirers of both men, the New York Times reports. So, yeah, so that is something I like a lot. In an interview, Kucinich rejected any suggestion that this race is between two generally analogous progressives on policies. He described himself unsustainably as a leader for a couple of decades on issues like single-payer healthcare. And since the Parkland, Florida massacre in February, he has made gun control safety central to his campaign, reminding voters of Cordray's A rating from the NRA and his refusal to embrace an assault weapons ban. That's a major X. This is very problematic. So he got the F. Kucinich's wife did. Kucinich's wife, Elizabeth, 3 decades younger than her husband and 6 inches taller, mouth instructions to the front while filming him. 2 other Democrats, Joe Schiavone, a state senator, and Bill O'Neill, a former Ohio Supreme Court justice, are all competing to replace Governor John Kasich, a term-limited Republican. The leading... Oh, so yeah, that's cool. John Kasich is on his way out. That's nice. Their leading Republican candidates are Mike DeWine and Mary Taylor, the lieutenant governor. But Kucinich, more than most Democrats, has run afoul of perceived liberal doctrine over the years. He opposed once abortion rights. He has echoed Trump's concerns about a deep state plot, and he is reported receiving $20,000 for a speech from a group sympathetic to President Bashar al-Assad, which is a little bit worrying as well. So, I mean, both of these guys, they have some seriously worrying situations. But personally, I'm going to have to go with Dennis. I like both of them. I'd vote for both of them, no matter who wins. But I would take my personal preference by a little bit is Dennis Kucinich. All right. Now we turn to California, where Senator Kamala Harris became the latest lawmaker to swear off all donations from corporate political action committees, telling a radio host in mid-April she made the move after being asked about it in a town hall by a constituent. So nice. Yeah, so Senators Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Elizabeth Warren, Maria Cantwell, and Bernie Sanders have all take the pledge not to take corporate PAC contributions. And two of them, Warren and Sanders, have been doing it for quite a while. But the others, excluding Cantwell, have just done it recently. And Cantwell did do it recently as well. But the others, excluding Cantwell, are regularly floated as possible contenders. So contenders giving them political incentive to declare themselves independent of corporate money. Many Americans have grown increasingly distrustful of big business's influence in politics since the Citizens United v. FEC decision back in 2010. So in fact, Harris cited the case while explaining her decision not to accept cash from corporate PACs on The Breakfast Club, this New York radio show. I'm probably going to listen to it today. In fact, the Breakfast Club, and I did see her on, but I did not hear that part. She was on like a few weeks ago, I think. I think the money that has had such an outside influence on our politics, and especially with the Supreme Court determining Citizens United, which basically means big corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money on influencing our campaigns, right? So we're supposed to have an equal vote, but it's just not working. We'll try to play the clip of her announcing that in just a moment for y'all. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty exciting. But anyway, if we can get that to work. But swearing off corporate PAC money can be one positive step a lawmaker can make towards reducing the corrupt influence of money on our politics, but it's far from enough. The reason that money from PACs, corporate or elsewhere, is a compromises a relatively insignificant portion of those senators' campaign contributions. So its PACs aren't all of it. So critics don't think it doesn't receiving corporate PAC donations, that is, noting that the bigger threat of influence comes from wealthy donors who don't funnel their cash through PACs. But for politicians looking to seize on public discontent with the influence of money on politics, the decision makes for an effective messaging ploy. You can say, I'm not taking any money from PACs, but corporations, bring it on the money. So Michael J. Malbin, a campaign finance researcher at Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy, pointed out to The Intercept that Harris has received only a small amount of total campaign funding from PACs. However, she received many of her itemized contributions from individuals whose income is derived from work as corporate executives. So you have people with strong corporate ties or actually in corporations with themselves. We will look into that because it doesn't seem exactly right. So, we are going to look into this here. Kamala Harris, no PAC money. I mean, we're gonna see. We can see if we can possibly maybe try to play it for you here in just.
So let me.
In just a bit. So, all right, here she is. So this is the meeting with the town hall constituent. This would be interesting to play for you.
If a corporation or a corporate lobbyist wants to give you money for a campaign, will you tell them thanks but no thanks?
Well, it depends. It depends. I mean,
wrong answer.
Look,
Well, that's not the answer you want to hear. It doesn't make it wrong.